Here. Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Sharp?
Here.
And Mr. Graham?
Here. First thing is a report of audit of general purpose financial statements for the East Parish School Board for the year ending June 30th, 2020. Got Ms. Stewart, Mr. Trey, you gonna handle this? Okay.
About this.
Good evening, Board. Trey Sanders with Hannity Bourgeois. We did the audit for the school district for the period ended June 30th, 2020. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the audit report with you. Initially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the reports, and then I'm going to go back through into the financial statements, into whatever detail y'all like to go through. I know the reports is a lot of what you're trying to find information on. The report is pretty large, pretty thick, but I'm going to start, like I said, I'm going to go through the reports first. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you open up the blue binder, that is the audit report, the basic financial statements as of June 30th, 2020. And if you flip back a couple of pages, you'll actually get to page 1. And just to kind of give you a highlight real quick, it is a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's what y'all have been receiving for a number of years, which is pretty much the best opinion you can get on the financial statements, a clean, unmodified opinion. So that is, the opinion is that. That has not changed. And when I get back in the back and I start going over the internal control report, the compliance, and also on the single audit, there's no issues identified in any of those reports. So I'll highlight where you can look at to see that. But we didn't identify any issues that needed to be reported on in this report. So I just want to point that out to you. So everything was, overall the audit went really well, and no issues were identified. Just want to kind of give you a couple of highlights real quick. On page 1 is the independent auditor's report. I'm going to hit just a couple of highlights in those paragraphs, and if you have any questions, again, please let me know. The first paragraph kind of tells you on page 1, that is the independent auditor's report. It tells you we audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, each major fund, and budgetary comparison statement of the general fund, etc. as of June 30th, 2020. Next paragraph kind of tells you that you are responsible for those preparation and fair presentation of those financial statements. Next section kind of goes over to auditor's responsibility, and that's kind of tells you there our responsibility to express opinions based on our audit on these financial statements, and we conduct our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. If you go down to the bottom of that page, that last paragraph like there, we'd like to just point out that we consider your internal control during that process, but we don't actually express an opinion on your internal control, what that last paragraph said. If you move over on to page 2, there's a couple of paragraphs or areas you want to look in this report. And that's on page 2 is your opinion paragraph. Again, it's an unmodified or clean opinion. And it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, the budgetary comparison statement of the general fund, the budgetary comparison statement of the disaster special revenue fund, fiduciary fund statement, aggregate remaining fund information as of June 30th, 2020, and respective of changes in financial position thereof for the year then in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Again, a clean, unmodified opinion. Next paragraph starts, it talks about there's some required supplementary information in here. There's some information on your pension schedules and also on your OPEB liability. There's some schedules back there. And the MD&A, that paragraph kind of tells you there that we don't express an opinion on those schedules, but they are included in your financial statements. You go down to the middle of the page, there's another information section. It tells you there's some schedules in the back. They start on schedules 3 through 16. It's some additional information provided in the financial statements. Schedule 17 is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. It's also some additional information. In that last paragraph on that page, on schedules 6 through schedule 16, in the schedule expenditures of federal awards, schedule 17, we do perform audit procedures on, and we express what we call an in relation to opinion. And at the bottom of that page, that last sentence is what we call the in relation to opinion. It says, in our opinion, those schedules 6 through 16 and schedule 17 is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the basic financial statements as a whole. So we do express an opinion on those schedules. If you flip over on page 3, schedules 4 and 5 are I call them the Bessie schedules. They've been in here for a while. There's some statistical schedules. We do some agreed upon procedures on them, but we don't express an opinion on them, is what that paragraph kind of tells you at the top. And on that last paragraph there on page 3 just says, hey, just remind you, hey, we look at your internal control, and there's a report in the back that I'm going to go over in just a second, but we don't express an opinion on it. Kind of went through it kind of fast, but nothing's really changed in the opinion report. In a couple of years, the report's going to change its format. And instead of having to dig back a couple of pages to find the opinion's going to be probably right there at the very top. That's coming in a couple of years. They are changing it up. Right now, you got to dig back a little bit to actually find the opinion, but that's changing. You have any questions on the independent auditor's report? If not, I'm going to get you to go all the way to the back. I'm going to go over the other couple of reports in here. The first one is not all the way to the back. I didn't mark it. Let's see. It starts on page 88. Page 88. The state is still requiring several schedules to be included in your financial statements. And on those schedules that are included in your financial statements, we're required to perform certain agreed upon procedures, and they're pretty much dictated by the state on what we have to do. And on page 88 is the independent accountant's report on applying agreed upon procedures on those schedules. And basically, without reading through it too much, I'll kind of hit a couple of highlights in it, but we didn't identify any issues with those schedules where we needed to report on anything. So basically, this report tells you the procedures that we did, and it tells you the results of those procedures. That's all it's doing. But there was no issues with the reports. If you look at page 88, the first procedure we did, number 1, if you look toward the bottom of the page, there was no differences noted when we went through the schedule. On page 89, you look at items 2, 3, and 4 where the procedures we were performed, and no differences were noted on those procedures. That's kind of what you're looking for. The next kind of paragraph kind of does tell you that those procedures were performed in accordance with attestation standards established by the AICPA and also governmental auditing standards. We're not expressing an opinion here. We're just telling the results of those procedures. And then those schedules follow on page 90, 91, and 92. Do y'all have any questions on that report? Again, it's just no issues and nothing identified. It's just kind of telling you we procedures performed and the results of those procedures. If not, I'm going to move back to the last 2 reports we have in this big book. On page 116. On page 116 is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. I'll hit the highlights in this report. As I mentioned a while ago, during our test work, et cetera, we didn't identify anything, and I'll point that in the report where that's located. The first paragraph kind of tells you again that we audited the financial statements and, of course, with government auditing standards, et cetera. Next section starts talking about internal control. We like to point out we do consider the district on the school board's internal control for the purpose of expressing our opinion on the financial statements, but not to express an opinion on internal control is what that paragraph says. If you flip over to page 117, the top of the page, there's really 2 sentences in this report you're looking at. If anything was identified on internal control, it would be in that first paragraph, the top of that page. It says, during our audit, that second to last sentence says, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. So nothing came to our attention that we needed to report on. And the next section talks about compliance and other matters. In the last sentence of that paragraph is what you're looking for. It says the results of our test disclosed no instances of noncompliance or other matters required to be reported on in government auditing standards. If we came up with anything related to bid laws or budgeting or something along those, that would be noted here. Nothing came to our attention. The last paragraph here in this report, kind of again, we like to tell you, hey, we consider internal control again for the purpose of expressing opinion on financial statements, but we don't express an opinion on internal control. This report just kind of tells you the results of our test work. Any questions? I'm going to go over the last report. It's independent auditor's report on the next page, starts on 118. Y'all are required to have what we call a single audit because of the amount of federal dollars y'all receive is in excess of $750,000. I think the federal dollars y'all received is somewhere around $34 million. So you are required to have a single audit. And what we do during a single audit is we come in and we test your compliance with certain attributes that are required, and those attributes are kind of told what we need to test based on the federal government. They call it uniform guidance. So we came in and we tested those procedures, and then we'll express an opinion on compliance, and then we'll tell you if we found anything on internal control. And again, there was no issues identified, but I'm just going to point out in the paragraphs where you can find that information. 118, it kind of tells you we audited the financial statements, or we audited Livingston Parish School Board's compliance with the type of compliance requirements described in the OMB compliance supplement that could have a direct and material effect on the Livingston Parish, on the school board's major federal programs for the year ended June 30th. Management's responsibility is you are responsible for compliance with the federal statutes, regulations, etc. And our responsibility is to express opinion on compliance based on our work. And we do the audit, and we do this test work in accordance with government auditing standards and also in accordance with uniform guidance is what that next paragraph says. And at the top of page 119, we also issue an unmodified opinion on your compliance, strictly on compliance. But it says, in our opinion, the school board complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each major federal program for the year ended June 30th, 2020. So that's a clean, unmodified opinion, no issues identified. And the next section talks about internal control. While we're looking at compliance, we also have to consider internal control to make sure you got controls in place over compliance. Again, we're not this part we're not expressing an opinion, but we do test your controls on the federal programs. If you go down in the third paragraph of that section, it's the second to last one on the page. The second to last sentence says we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that we consider to be material weaknesses. Again, nothing came to our attention that we needed to report on. In the last paragraph, it kind of tells you that the purpose of the report is internal control of compliance is to describe the scope of our testing of internal control and the results of that testing based on the uniform guidance. We're not expressing an opinion on internal control. So that is the reports. In the next couple of pages, kind of express just what I just said. You'll see there's no findings or questions. Cost tells you on page 120 the programs that we did test for the federal or single audit. 121 is if there was any findings or question costs in the current year, they'd be listed. And 122, there was no issues identified last year that we need to readdress this year. So those are all none and none. Y'all have any questions on the reports? I'll just hit a few highlights on the financials, and then that's all I will do unless you have any specific questions. The financial statements, just want to point out real quick that there's two types of financial statements in here. On page 4 is the management's discussion and analysis, and I always recommend that Kim and her team do a really good job putting together information. Kim prepares its MD&A, and if you want to look real quick, say, hey, what happened last year? Some of the really big highlights. You usually can go to this MD&A, and it'll tell you some really big things that happened during the year. You don't have to dig through the financial statements too much. I do like to point out there's two types of financial statements in here. There's one called a government-wide financial statement, and that's usually the first couple of schedules. I think it's Schedule A and B. And when you look at a government-wide financial statements, you'll see your fixed assets in there, any debt that you have, and you'll also see your OPEB liability and your pension liability. The statements that y'all get throughout the year from Kim are on what we call a fund. They're fund financial statements, not F-U-N, but fund, fund financial statements. Those start on Schedule C and then go back. And there's a reconciliation between those two statements. So when you look at a government-wide financial statements, you're going to see, ooh, we got a kind of a negative net position there. And that negative net position is really related to your pension liability and your OPEB liability. That's what causes that. You don't have a whole lot of control over your pension liability. You're kind of stuck in the pension plans that y'all have to participate in. You have a little control over your OPEB liability. That's your retirees, you're paying the health insurance and stuff like that. Just want to point out there's two separate financial statements, so you look at them, you're trying to figure them out, but that's what's going on there. Throughout the year, a couple things I'll just point out real quick. You'll see when you look into the financial statements, had a pretty positive on both sets of financial statements, whether it's the government-wide or the fund financial statements. You actually entered the year positive net position on both. You'll see that your MFP funding is up about $9 million or so. Sales tax is up about $5 million. Property tax was up a little bit, not significantly, and you kept kind of expenses in check pretty well. So some of that flowed down to your bottom line, and that's how you got an increase in your cash in relation to that. That's kind of the big things that happened during the year. There is a footnote in the back. Two things on the footnotes I want to point out is we do put a footnote in the financial statements now and let the reader know, hey, we had an event, very unusual event last year called COVID-19. There is some uncertainty to that. We don't know how that's going to affect things. There's a footnote that says that. And the other footnote is, and I think y'all are aware of this, is that y'all started to do that construction project on the South Side schools. And that's a pretty big contract y'all signed right before the end of the year. That footnote's in there. Another little thing I want to point out to you is that probably at some point this year, y'all participated in the Bass Pro TIF back when it went out a couple of years ago, about 2007 or so. Those bonds will be paid out at some point physically in the 2020 calendar year. Those bonds will be paid out. So at some point later this year, you may actually start seeing some of that sales tax flow into your books. That's something I know everybody's been kind of watching a little bit. I just want to point that out. It's paying off way ahead of schedule. Sales tax, even through your sales tax, up about $5 million. And for that district, their sales tax continued to be strong all of last year. So it'll be paying off significantly earlier than what the bonds are
Because it's being paid off early, we won't really know exactly when we'll start receiving those.
I would think it would be this year.
It's this year, but.
Yeah, you don't know when.
What?
They had,
Okay.
yeah.
We've heard April and September, or September, so.
Yeah, it'll be before the end of the
Either
year.
way,
So it'll be a little shot in the arm. Not
Yeah.
anything helps. So
sure.
anything helps. And that I didn't want to dig too far into statements, but if y'all, I know I just gave them to you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at a draft of them or not. I will be coming back to the meeting on Thursday afternoon, evening. And if you anything between now and then you see something, you say, hey, you got something specific, please let me know. You can either ask me beforehand or during that meeting, and we'll try to address those things. But again, you can see really where the funds were flowing into the MFP, the sales tax and stuff, keeping expenditures in check, things like that. So it does go down to your bottom line, help your cash position out, stuff like that.
Anybody have any
Have any
questions?
specific questions or? And if y'all don't have any questions, I got one little deal as we give you all this letter. It's our audit committee letter, we call it. I will not read it to you because it's a lot of stuff in here, but I'll hit the highlights with you real quick. The audit committee letter is throughout the audit process, and we usually come in before the audit starts and we get a chance to speak to you guys and ladies. And if there's anything that comes up throughout the audit process, any issues, they usually show up in this letter if we had any problems with the audit, et cetera. It tells you just to remind you that there is two really big estimates in your financial statements. That OPEB liability, that's just a huge estimate. Your net pension liability, again, it's a huge estimate. Those are your two biggest estimates in your financial statements.
Sorry, what exactly you said, OPAP?
It's the other post-employment benefits.
Okay.
It's the payments y'all are paying on retirees' health insurance and stuff.
Okay.
And it went up a pretty good bit this year. Again, it's not something that's going to happen today. If some reason the system had to shut down, then you would have to do it. Y'all on a pay-as-you-go basis, and that's when you look at your fund financial statements, that's where you see that. We had a couple of journal entries. They're attached to here. It didn't change the financial statement significantly at all. There is a couple of new accounting standards coming up. Next year, I think we'll be adopting GASB 84. It'll change your school activity funds. I don't think we've got quite the direction the Department of Education wants to go with that just yet, but instead of a separate statement in the back, it may flow up and be a special revenue fund in your financial statement. So it'll look a little different. Don't have to budget for it, but your school activity funds will be moving position in the financial statements. GASB 87 deals with leases, and that'll be coming up in a couple of years too. I think you'll have to kind of look at your leases, all your leases out there, and make sure whether or not we got to set them up. They're trying to make sure you don't have any kind of off-balance sheet liabilities out there. It's more really for the private industry, but the GASB also, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, picked it up too. But those are a couple of things going on, but that's all that letter kind of tells you. No other issues were identified throughout the audit process. We got a manager representation letter from management, things like that. So,
I have any questions? Okay, thanks, Trey.
one last thing I'll say right quick. This year has been a very unusual year. I know everybody knows that up there. Kim and them, they did a tremendous job. We didn't physically come out here a whole lot. We got some information from them, and they really helped us out. And it went, considering all the circumstances, I think it went pretty well. I'm hoping they think so also. This year, we hope to physically be out here. We like to touch people and see people and things like that. It was just the challenges last year just didn't allow for that. But I want to thank them for the help that they provided us here. It was made it go as best as it could. So,
Thank you. Stuart, thank y'all. Can we take action on this? To accept it? Yeah. Okay, if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to, Mr. Cox made a motion, we accept this report, and Mr. Sharp seconded it. Any questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the like sign. Okay,
all right. And thank y'all. And again, if you ever have any questions, please let me know.
appreciate it. Next item is the 13th check for all school employees. Mr. Murphy.
Committee members and board members, you have before you a proposal for a 13th check for all employees for Livingston Parish Public Schools. I would like to point out just briefly, I released this information to you Friday. You should have had this information, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding this information. I think that it is incumbent upon the school system during this particular year, during the hardships, and without reservation, after going through the audit report, we were able to increase our general fund revenues through some different sources. As you can see, MFP by $9 million, and then of course sales tax by $5 million. So what we did, what Ms. Stewart did, is set aside some money for salaries for 13th check for this year. And you can see that amount that's set aside. I sent that to you on Friday, and it's back in your folder today. It is a sizable amount, and we certainly are very, very excited about our ability to offer a 13th check this year. With that said, on the second page in the information that you have are two different proposals for the 13th check this year. We are making two proposals, one at $750 for employees, and you can see the differing calculations there as to what we are suggesting that we do. You also have a proposal in front of you, $1,000 for an employees. And you can see that we have the existing adjustments there and additional amounts that would cost if we annualize and if we index these raises. With that said, supplement, you're right, it's not a raise. My fault. Yeah, I misspoke on that. It is a stipend or a supplement, please, so that there's no misunderstanding on that. With that said, you can see at the bottom of the second page, there are three proposals. You can see the related cost under each proposal, and it is our recommendation that we adopt the stipend of $1,000 per employee and annualize and index that cost. What we will be doing is exceeding by $188,000, $368, the amount that we have set aside for these salaries and benefits. So it is our recommendation, it is my recommendation that this committee consider the $1,000 stipend along with annualized and indexed for 13th check. If it is approved by the board, it'll come before committee tonight, and if it's approved Thursday night, it is our intention to make this stipend available to our employees on February 11th. February 11th is the day before we get out for, it's the day before our employees get off for Mardi Gras, and we really wanted to try to get it into their hands as quickly as we can. I've gone through business, I've gone through payroll, and they have assured me that it should not be an issue issuing this stipend if the board chooses to approve this on Thursday evening. So with that said, if someone has questions or anything, I'll direct them to Ms. Stewart. No, I'm just kidding. I'll try to answer them, but that is the reason Ms. Amy and Ms. Stewart are here this afternoon. So it's open for discussion.
Can you explain to us the difference between the flat amount and then the annualized indexed amount? What that difference actually means?
That difference is, what we do is we base this salary on a 182-day schedule. Anyone who is indexed at a current salary above their normal salary, let's take, for instance, anybody that has an index, it may work out here, they may work somewhere else. We would add additional money so that we meet their everyday salary.
So the
index.
1.12s and all those
That's correct.
people, okay.
All the index amounts. Annualization takes into account anybody who works over 182 days a year.
Okay.
So, and then those days would be added on, and the additional amounts would be added there. So basically, you can look at it kind of like this. Certified is indexed, classified is annualized, even though that's not true on every incident.
Right.
Ms. Stewart or Ms. Amy, would you like to add to that?
The majority of people are on the certified. It's not that many that are indexed.
That's correct.
Most of them are indexed. Which is that 182. So that is what it is. And then your 240 are like 1.32. That's annualized. But then you'll have 1.65 or whatever.
Yeah.
The index.
And does that take into account, like, so a base teacher, it doesn't take steps into account, but what about plus 30s and other tack-ons for that? It doesn't take any of that account, it's just day's work plus if you're on a schedule where you're in that 1.12 or whatever, where you're getting, okay. Did we look at an option for years of service, or did we consider that, or is that just too much work to?
When's the last time we gave a 13th check?
In 19, we gave a $750 stipend across the board.
To everyone, okay, across the board. 19, yeah.
Now, would this also take into account people that are on 6-hour days and 8 hours? Those would be, okay.
Those will be prorated in.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, any, other questions? Discussion? No, how y'all feel, but I would
$1,000
entertain
across
a
the board, right?
motion or something or another.
I'll make a motion.
All right, which one you think's a great idea? We need to narrow it down. We have some options here.
Accept the superintendent's recommendation for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 We accept the superintendent's recommendation.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Cox to accept the superintendent's recommendation, and we're gonna let Ms. Benton second that one. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Which option
The
for the $1,000?
$1,000 across the board, yeah,
Been a while since we did that. So we need to get everything we can.
yeah, absolutely, I agree.
2019.
Yes, ma'am.
That's his recommendation.
That's my
Yeah,
recommendation.
that was his, yeah. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed by the like sign. Okay, passed. Unanimous.
Mr. Graham, before we leave that item, I'd like to thank the board. Thank you so much. It's certainly deserved this year. We're always going to continue to look for opportunities to better compensate our employees as we move forward. This is the 13th check, much deserved. We do intend to roll this out, as I said, February the 11th. So I'm very grateful to the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Field. Do I need a motion to adjourn, or can I just call adjournment? Somebody make a motion, I'll adjourn my committee meeting. Just to make sure. We got a motion from Mr. Cox to adjourn and a second from Mr. Sharp. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed by the like sign. This committee meeting is adjourned.